For my presentation, I have chosen to research Dr. Dorothy Height, who was a civil rights activist and women's rights activist, determined to improve circumstances of and opportunities for African American women. She was an advocate and educator, a leader, a strong force for equal rights. Her life exemplifies her passionate commitment for a just society and her vision for a better world. Dr. Height was born in Richmond, Virginia in 1912. This was a time in America where rigid racial segregation laws controlled social life and everything was segregated. At an early age, Dr. Height established herself as a dedicated and determined student, winning a $1,000 scholarship during the contest where she demonstrated her oratorical skills, something that would work in her benefit as she would commit to a career in activism. Dr. Height continued to excel academically and following high school was accepted into the prestigious Barnard College in New York. However, once she arrived, school officials turned her away, explaining that their quota of 2 black students had been met. The discrimination that she experienced as an African American woman would shape her life and move her on to the path of social activism. She would go on to attend New York University, earning her bachelor's and master's in 4 years. During and following her college years, Dr. Height became a leader of the United Christian Youth Movement of North America during the New Deal era. It was during this period that Dr. Height's career as a civil rights advocate began to unfold, providing her opportunities to develop her leadership skills and devotion to civil rights. She took various jobs serving poor communities around New York. Her goals were ambitious. Dr. Height recalls the 1930s as the most politically vibrant era of the 20th century for young people. She saw this time as an opportunity to use her knowledge and drive to make a difference for others who were discriminated against, advocating for those who did not otherwise have a voice, and felt that as a Christian she was committed to helping those in need, regardless of the challenges she herself would face. After working for some time as a social worker in New York, Dr. Height joined the staff of the Harlem YWCA in 1937. This year would prove to be a turning point in her life. It was then that Dr. Height was noticed by Mary McLeod Bethune, the president of the NCNW, one of the most powerful women of the New Deal era. The NCNW aimed to unite disparate black women's groups into one powerful entity devoted to ending racial and gender discrimination and improving lives of black women and their families. Integrating her training as a social worker and her commitment to rise above the limitations of race and sex, Dr. Height rose through the ranks of the YWCA. One of the most major accomplishments of her time was directing the integration of all of its centers in 1946. Dr. Height coordinated the introduction of a policy to integrate its facilities nationwide and was elected National Interracial Education Secretary of the organization. In 1957, Dr. Height was elected the 4th president of the NCNW, serving until 1998. As NCNW president, Dr. Height helped organize and coordinate the 1963 March on Washington, participating in virtually all major civil and human rights efforts in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. During the planning stage of the 1963 March on Washington, male organizers refused to appoint a woman to speak at the massive rally. Dr. Height protested the decision but lost, fueling her fight against gender discrimination. The march was an unprecedented success. More than 250,000 people from across the nation came together in Washington, D.C. to peacefully demonstrate their support for the passage of a meaningful civil rights bill, an end to racial segregation in schools, and the creations of jobs for the unemployed. Dr. Height was the woman team member leader in the United Civil Rights Leadership along with Martin Luther King. Despite Dr. Height's inclusion in the Big Six, as it was known, women were treated as junior members in the movement. Peaceful, nonviolent, organized protests were the approach used to bring awareness to the injustice that African Americans faced during the 1960s. The leaders of the civil rights movement did an exceptional job at instilling hope and determination in those who were along with them in seeking racial harmony and a belief that black and white Americans could live together in peace. The Civil Rights Act, signed by Lyndon B. Johnson, outlawed discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, required equal access to public places and employment, and enforces desegregation of schools and the right to vote. Dr. Height continued to work on behalf of NCNW establishing the Women's Center for Education and Career Advancement in 1970 as a project to meet the challenge of providing marketable skills to women of color who held marginal and tenuous places in the paid labor force. In the 1980s, Dr. Height launched a major new initiative that focused on strengthening Black families. This brought together multiple generations of Black families to celebrate their heritage. Dr. Height's idea was to remind African Americans of the traditional values that had enabled them to overcome historic discrimination and to share practical information for getting ahead. I have included the social work mission statement to tie together Dr. Height's achievements over the past 4 decades. Dr. Height spent most of the 20th century fighting poverty, racism, and sexism. Whether she was leading fair wage battles in the 1930s, to organizing voter registration drives in the 1960s, to initiating nationwide Black family reunions in the 1980s and 90s. Dr. Height deeply believed it was her duty as a Christian to help people who suffer from discrimination and poverty. Our world could use more people like her today. I am honored to learn and share her contribution to social welfare.